So this is 2 cups of tap water, a little bit warm, not super hot or anything. And I'm going to use some, I don't want to spill it out here, some instant dry yeast. And I don't have my regular measuring spoon, so I'm just using larger than a regular spoon, and so it's like about a tablespoon. Oops. And it's okay if it's a little over. It's not much. I'll just cut it a little short there. Gonna sprinkle that in the bowl. Now, you can use regular sugar. You can use white sugar, brown sugar, any kind of sugar you want. I like using a little bit of honey, so this is just to activate that yeast. Basically, what creates the bloom with the yeast is the yeast's response or reaction to the eating of the sugars that you add to it. So, like with this honey, that yeast is going to start feeding off it, and as it feeds off of that honey, it's going to kind of gas out, I guess you could say. And that's what causes the bloom. And you'll see what the bloom looks like as soon as this starts to get going here. So I'm just kind of rinsing off the honey from the spoon. And then I'll let it sit. It'll take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to get it to completely start blooming. So that is what it looks like when the yeast blooms. There's a smiley face. Ha! There's a smiley face. I gotta love it. Smiley faces. I've mentioned this before. I use a salad spinner for my bread. I just take the little salad doodly out, and I like the size of this, and I like having a lid for proofing. Makes it a little easier. So now what I'm going to do is add my flour. I think I'm just going to set this over here so that I can use my lovely little countertop or cupboard space to hold my camera. And I am going to put, and I don't sift this or anything, it's just regular all-purpose flour, all-purpose unbleached flour. And I'm going to put a couple cups of flour in here. That one's not quite full. Close enough. I'm kind of like my grandma in the fact that I do kind of what she called it by guess and by golly. It's not always perfect measurements, just kind of by guess and by golly it's good. And now I'm going to add a little kind of well in there, and I'm going to pour my yeast right in there. Maybe mix that up a little bit, make sure I get all of it. And just give that a stir. And I always start out with the same amount of flour that I have water, just so I can get all the ingredients mixed up. And if you're going to add any salt to your mix, you definitely want to do it after the yeast has bloomed, because salt can actually hinder the bloom. So what I'll do, I'll just take my little shaker apart here, And again, by guess and by golly, I'm just gonna, that might be, that looks like it's about a teaspoon. So I'll just kind of sprinkle that in there. And keep mixing this up. Okay, I think that's probably pretty well mixed. So I'm going to take my third cup of flour. And pour that in there. And mix it up. For a regular white bread, I would do this with 4 cups, roughly. I always kind of mix a little shy of the 4 cups, just so that I can use the remaining flour as I'm working it, kneading it, and so it doesn't get too dry on me. Scrape the edges good here. And you'll see it's pretty sticky. But since this isn't my white bread, this is actually going to be an oat nut bread. I'm going to add some oatmeal and nuts to this. So I'm going to do that while I'm at the 3 cups of flour here. So I'll take my big jar of oats. Then I am going to pour about a cup of oats into the dough and stir that up. And I also have some sliced almonds that I'm going to be adding to this. And now, I'm not really going to measure this too carefully, but I'm going to take about a handful of them there. And I'm just going to kind of crush them in my hands so that the pieces are fairly small. Not too small though. I like a nice hearty bread. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If you really want it perfect, you know, put it in a grinder or a mortar and pestle or something like that. But I find that just doing it by hand usually makes it pretty good consistency. And I don't want too much, just enough to give it some little nutty crunch in each of the bites. And now that I've got it fully incorporated, I'm going to add about another half cup of flour to this. I'm not going to add it all at once, so maybe a quarter of a cup. And stir it up. And you can see it's all incorporated. I've got the edges all scraped into there. And it's starting to kind of pull away from the bowl. So that's probably about right. So now what I'm going to do is just sprinkle a little bit of flour over the top of that. Maybe a little bit on my hand so I can pick that off of there just good, like that. And then I'm just going to kind of pull it up and smush it over onto itself. Sprinkle a little more in there. It's pretty sticky at this point, so you will be messy. And I mean, I could still just use the spoon for this, but I find that Getting my hands in there actually kind of helps with the folding process, and it doesn't tear up my hand quite as much as that handle of the spoon will, because the tougher the dough gets, the harder it is to stir it up. So again, I'll just keep adding and kind of pulling it up and pushing it down over the top of itself, kind of folding it. And now you can see it's sticking to itself more than it's sticking to the bowl. Still sticking to me quite a bit, but that's about right. I just want to kind of get it so where it stays in somewhat of a ball form in the middle. And pull some of that dough off of my fingers. Drop it down in there. And now that I've got it all in there, I'm going to cover it. And make sure that that part there is covered so it doesn't dry out. And I'm going to let it sit and rise, or what they call proof. So it's been a little while since ooh, look at that. Nummy numbers. It's doubled in size, so it is time. Sprinkle a little bit of flour on top of that. And we'll sprinkle a little bit of flour on our work surface. And then we'll just start kind of pulling this out of here. Get a little flour on my fingers so I don't stick. Ooh, it's a thing of beauty. And get, oops, poof, making a mess. Just kind of fold it up over itself, smash it in, and you can see it's quite a bit less sticky now. And I'm not gonna over knead it. Give it a little pull and tuck. Nice little ball. Drop it back in here, and that's only going to be one of 2 times that I'll do that. So I'll just cover it and let that double in size one more time before I put it in the pan.